betray our country?
Well, after everything we've done, I don't think it's such a betrayal.
Defecting to America?
America's not so bad.
Secret agents deployed by the KGB to the United States. It's the plot in the FX series The Americans, the show actually inspired by real events with a Canadian connection.
It's a story that we've seen in the headlines a little bit over the years, but this is a real deep dive in that story that really tells you the full story of this family, their time in Canada, and what's at stake.
MACLEAN'S writer Michael Friscolanti has been piecing together the incredible story of husband and wife Andrei Bezrukov and Elena Vavilova. The Russian spies surfaced in Canada in the late 80s, stealing the identities of 2 dead infants from Montreal. He became Donald Howard Heathfield. She would be known as Tracy Leanne Foley.
Their job in Canada was to become those people. They had the fake IDs, so they were trying to build the so-called legend as it was known.
The couple settled in Toronto, having 2 sons, Timothy and Alexander. The boys leading normal lives, going to school, visiting the zoo in Niagara Falls, unaware of who their parents really were. When you think Russian spy, you wouldn't associate discount diaper delivery service, but that is exactly the business that Don created. In fact, it was so viable, it was even featured in the Toronto Star. It still exists today here in Mississauga, but of course, under new ownership. Now, former employees of Don who were recently contacted by MACLEAN say they are shocked to find out who he really was.
We tracked down one of the guys who worked as a driver at the Diapers Direct company that the father owned. And he had no clue. He had never even read that he had been busted back in 2010. So he was just in a state of shock for a few minutes that was happening. And then, you know, they talked about their experience with him. I think what stands out is that they were completely normal, which was their job, of course, right, to blend into the background.
It wasn't until 2010 that the couple was brought down by the FBI after the family had lived in the U.S. for a decade. The parents back to Russia in a spy swap with the U.S. The 2 young boys' identities up in the air and no longer considered Canadian citizens in the eyes of the government.
In the Citizenship Act, there is a clause that says if your parents are employees of a foreign government, even if you're born in Canada, you cannot be a citizen.
Now in their 20s, Tim and Alex have been battling with the government, fighting to be Canadian. In June, the Federal Court of Appeal ruled that Ottawa reinstate Alex's citizenship, although the Trudeau government has until mid-September to appeal that to the Supreme Court.
There might be some who think, well, too bad for these men. You know what? Their parents were deep-cover Russian spies and they shouldn't get their Canadian citizenship. And there may be some people who will say, well, you know, they had no choice. They had no idea who their parents were and they were born here. I mean, should they be punished for their parents' crime?
A difficult question to answer. This is the last residence that Alex and Tim called home here in Toronto. While their legal battle is far from over, Alex maintains that he will always be Canadian at heart. And this, having grown up here, this is his only identity, he says, one that he's willing to fight for and to the end to retain. For a full read, head to macleans.ca. Near Bayview and Lawrence, Melanie Ng, City News.